Good afternoon, everybody. This is the pre-bit before we actually start the workshop or the LinkedIn Live session. So I will bring it together formally within a couple of minutes, but this is just a chat to get it to get us going. So we've been having our normal fun before the session started, where the technology doesn't quite do what we expect it to do. So if we look a little bit furrowed, that's probably the reason, but luckily we're okay now. So what I'll do is, after that piece of waffle, I will go into it. Thank you very much, anybody that's chosen to listen to it. You're very, very welcome. For me personally, this is one of the most exciting topics around at the moment. So I hope by the end, at least, you'll share my enthusiasm. What we're looking at is in AI, a lot of companies are dabbling with it. I have come to the conclusion that some people aren't really thinking through what they're doing in advance. And a little bit of pre-work will make a significant difference to the results they get at the end. And as a part of this LinkedIn Live session, we're exploring how particularly Marshall Goldsmith leadership coaching, but probably other leadership coaching, can significantly help the results that you get from AI implementation. So if I can ask my esteemed guests to introduce themselves, and just let me say a few words first. I'm really pleased we've got Brandon and Grace here. Brandon is CEO for Marshall's coaching arm, and I'll hand it over to Brandon. Please introduce yourselves.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. It's good to be here, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Brandon Murgard. As Michael mentioned, I'm the CEO of Stakeholder Center Coaching, and I've been working with Marshall in this field for about 11 years. I have also achieved the distinction of Master Coach and International Practice Leader. My focus on the field has been geared towards training coaches, as well as pushing the boundaries of what we can do empirically for the scientific research on the common factors of executive coaching, which is an area I'm very passionate about. I'd say my interest in AI is very much in how we can enhance leadership for more people more quickly, driving accessibility and training people to use AI to uncover their biggest challenges and potential solutions, as well as how coaching can augment organizations' attempts to bring large AI projects into the company. So I'm looking forward to hearing your questions and also learning from Michael and Grace along the way. Thank you for having me.
That's cool. This is more, just to remind everybody, this is more of a broadcast session. If you do have any questions, if you write them in the comment section, we will answer them, but we may not answer them straight away. But thanks a lot for that. Grace.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Grace Q, and I'm excited to join my colleagues today to discuss really how Marshall Goldsmith's stakeholder-centered coaching can support company-wide AI projects. So as a certified stakeholder-centered and team coach, I specialize in leadership development and AI implementation with a unique focus on guaranteed measurable leadership growth through that stakeholder engagement. And I really believe that AI integration isn't just a technological challenge, it's a leadership opportunity. So by combining coaching with AI strategies, I help leaders successfully navigate the complexities of AI while driving those sort of sustainable growth and indeed results. Thank you.
Brilliant. A very little bit about me. I'm a one-to-one leadership coach, one-to-one NLP trainer and NLP coach trainer, and I work with people around the world, mostly on Zoom. And I've got into this because many years ago, when I was it looks like a young man at the moment, I was involved in a very large project where we put EPOS and inventory in a retail company. And the CEO pulled me out to run the cost benefit analysis. And we interviewed every job level to find out how the impact of information could be of benefit to them and our clients. And we ended up doing a project that I think cost 90 million in the end over a few years. And at that stage, I realized any project that involved changing everybody's job in the organization is a little bit non-trivial. but a little bit of planning and a little bit of good communication and people at least having the opportunity to be honest with each other is very useful. As my job as a one-to-one NLP trainer, I've had 3 clients, and I think this is quite fun. 2 of the clients, vice presidents in large companies, not going to say who, were invited by their CEO to run AI projects, and they both refused because they realized the complexity of it. They realized that they were going to be involved in all sorts of very interesting politics and culture stuff and turf wars, and they decided without the right brief that it wouldn't be appropriate and it would be safer watching from the outside. My 3rd client actually threw himself in, and he's a sort of head of level, and he's looking at the introduction of AI into his organization. And because I'm doing NLP stuff with him, I'm helping him with his board presentations and all that sort of thing. So it's helping me pick out the real issues and the real opportunities in going through this. So that's great. Before we start on companies, I thought it might be quite interesting just to go back to us as individuals, as coaches, consultants, as leaders. How are we using AI ourselves? We did a podcast and report of this before, but I thought it'd be useful to catch off. So starting with Brandon, just 1 or 2 applications that you've used AI for yourself before we go into the big company stuff.
Yeah, 2 areas that I use AI quite heavily. One is in creating curriculums for coaches, for coach training, for coach exercises, things like that. And the other is as a researcher. It's phenomenal how much information can be distilled and how precisely you can search out particular research papers with AI.
Okay, excellent. Grace?
As part of my work, I actively, leverage AI tools to enhance the way I support leaders and teams during AI implementations. For instance, I use MarshallBot to explore and develop effective strategies which are tailored to helping leaders navigate the complexities of AI adoption. I also use it for myself, really, platforms like ChatGPT for Perplexity to stay on the cutting edge of that AI research and resources. And these tools allow me to really deeply explore AI implementation strategies and study, successful case studies and identify best practices from other companies. Thank you.
Brilliant, excellent. And a couple of examples I've done. I've just done my own website, and it's been an iterative process, both with ChatGPT and Marshall's bot, sort of saying, this is the site, what might be the key topics? If there's a homepage, what are the key topics of a homepage? It's come back with some topics, I've changed it, and I said, write some rough content. They sent it back, I rewrote it, I've edited. So it's very much an iterative process, but you may like it or not like it, but I'm going to send out a link to the paper behind what we're talking about at the end, and that will come from this site that the pictures and the content are definitely, they're me, but they are me being AI augmented. Okay, let's move that. Now, doing AI for ourselves as individuals is quite fun and quite complex. Putting it into a company can even be more complex, because I have this view that if a company now is a little bit dysfunctional, and we all know, we've all worked for large companies, sometimes they're very good, but they have their own little challenges. If you put AI in without thinking into something with a little challenges, you may end up accelerating those challenges. And it's like if you amplify a mess, you just get a bigger mess. And I think this is one of the things that people have to be aware when, as a company, they implement AI. So moving on to some research that we've done over the last year, or years actually, and this is no different from any big change project, as all of you will know, that we said, what lenses should somebody who is looking at an AI project consider? And one of the challenges is, I've talked to people about AI, many people are looking at it from their own lens. They're looking at it from, say, the lens of data, or they're looking at it from the lens of the benefits of their particular department. What they're not doing is bringing it all together in a holistic thing, because the maximum benefit will be got if everybody works together in working out what the proper benefits are. So what are the things? And I'm trying to go through this quite quickly. You will get notes on all this, so you don't have to make any notes yourself if you're interested. So the first one, vision, purpose, business strategy. How does your NEI plans relate to that? What's the financial perspective? And bizarrely, in talking to people, I've been amazed how many people are pushing forward with AI without considering the overall financial impact in the short and long term. Culture and learning. You're dealing with people. Maybe you've chosen with your AI project that you'll get rid of 20%. Sorry, I'm using the wrong words. Get rid of 20% of your people. How are you communicating this in such a way that it doesn't really mess everybody up? You know, it's what is the impact on what you're doing is on culture and learning, because you need everybody to pull together to get the best benefits out of it. Technical and scalability. And many people are coming from it from a data quality scalability point of view. But again, if you have garbage in, garbage out, if you haven't got accurate data, you're going to give AI not so useful information. Ethical, legal, and regulatory perspective. Now, some people, what's I going to say? That potentially missing some of this stuff could have fairly serious consequences. It may not be you in your organization, but some organizations it's very important. So please don't forget it. And lastly, but obviously absolutely key, is your project change management and governance. So what we're suggesting is that you may come up with different lenses, but you will need to cover all those things. Also, when you thought about it, you may decide as an organization that some of them are unimportant, but please make that decision consciously. Don't leave it out. Now, let me throw this out. And actually, I'm going to throw this to Grace first. From your point of view, and the purpose I'm asking you is just to give a different perspective, what might be a really important lens?
I think when implementing AI, one crucial lens companies must consider is the cultural and learning perspective, because this is not just a minor detail, it's essential to that sort of long-term success. And a company, that does foster a growth mindset and encourages continuous learning is far more prepared to embrace AI and its potential. And if you look at it from a benefits perspective, promoting a growth mindset and learning culture will ensure that teams view AI as an opportunity and not a threat. And it helps employees develop the skills and adaptability that is necessary for navigating AI-driven changes, which then leads to smoother implementation, higher engagement, and indeed better long-term outcomes. Some of the cost of not doing it, if you choose to ignore it, really ignoring this perspective can result in resistance. It result in fear and low morale among teams, making it much harder for AI projects really to take hold. So without a learning focused culture, the organization may struggle, with talent gaps, slow adoption, and even project failure. So AI is, we know it's rapidly evolving. And if a company's culture isn't evolving with it, the project risks really falling short of its potential.
Okay, thank you very much. Brandon, what's your view? And as I say, we may develop some of the costs or problems later, so you can concentrate either on both the benefits and the risks of avoiding a thing, but we'll come back to that as a second question too. So Brandon, what's your view? What's important to those lenses for you?
Yeah, I think Grace hit the nail on the head, especially when she talks about aspects like adaptability and cooking that into the culture. I would certainly encourage organizations to look at the sixth lens when you're looking at projects and change management, to treat your AI project to instill the requisite adaptability into the workforce. You need a good, strong Northern Star. So as you approach projects with AI, it's useful to think through, how is this going to help the customer, rather than to go through and lead with, we are now AI affiliated. And I'm sure many of you have seen every software nowadays is AI enabled. And it's more about affiliation with AI as a trend rather than saying, how is this going to create material benefit for the customers we serve, is a very important lens, which, by the way, we have dropped into the all 6 lenses into the chat as well.
No, brilliant. Well done. Thank you. Okay, I will go with, actually, I'm not sure if this is financial or business strategy, but one of the things I think it's important for the board to do is to confirm is when they look at AI, are they looking at it a project that could totally transform the industry, that could change the company, or could make small changes that will keep them up to date? Because depending on which route they take could be a significant difference in investment. You know, as I was saying, I was involved in this thing with it was B&Q actually. It's a Home Depot type place in the UK, and the CEO wanted to change the whole industry. So when we were involved in the project I was talking about, he was almost absolutely determined that this would lead to a total transformation of the industry. And if you do that, you're managing your project with a very different lens to if you're just you're looking at to make incremental changes. So one of the things I think about, and I'm not sure whether it's in strategy or finance, but it's make a decision of how big you think this is, because how you set the whole thing up will depend on that. And it's okay to say we'll start small, but it's still going to take probably a little bit more cost than you think, even if you start small. The other thing I think I would say is that this relates to one of my clients, and I think it's very wise, but it may not fit your industry, is they're looking through the benefits through almost 3 sub-lenses. They're looking through the lens of how they can affect the customer journey, which means they have to understand their customer journey a lot more than they did in the past. They're looking at their internal processes, or their actually more than internal processes, their basic processes like supply chain. How can you use AI to speed up the various bits of the supply chain? And the third one is they're looking at how can you use it to empower people. And they're 3 very different benefit areas that require different skills and different looking at. But it's a little bit like, to do it properly, they need to understand those 3 areas much more than they have in the past. So there's a lot of education and research and training in going there. Okay, can I throw it back to you? Let's look at either what you think is important because it will give the company benefit, or what you think is a potential poison pill that if everybody ignores it, it might bite them in 2 or 3 years' time, and they find it's almost impossible to recover. So, Brad, I like your smile. Brandon, you go first. Is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, you know, just hearing you say this is triggering PTSD from previous projects I've worked on and organizations, especially the kind of having your goose cooked much too late. I think it's crucial, a crucial misstep that organizations that I have worked with in the late stages of integrating AI into large projects is not understanding the separation between, it comes down to learning. And I think that this thread has been apparent in much of this discussion. There is the technical aspect of things that people need to know. And that's a matter of knowledge transfer. That's a matter of readiness and getting people prepared to take on the new information. But the entire other half of the equation is behavior, the things that people need to do. And what I see organizations do is focus too much on one or the other without focusing on bridging the gap. And that's where you wind up with an overeducated workforce on the technical side of things without strong enough, say, governance and compliance over doing the things that need to get done or having the right management skills to oversee that. This is something that you get 6 months into a projects and you're toast if that workforce is not prepared for it.
Brilliant, thanks. Grace. And you're smiling too.
Thank you, Brandon. I'm smiling because as Brandon was talking about, there's that sort of legal and regulatory aspect of it, which is Lens 5. And to me, it's one of the most significant risks a company faces when implementing AI is overlooking this. And there will be many companies who will overlook it, really, because ignoring it has got some, legal repercussions. And in an AI project, this can lead to serious consequences. So basically, I'll give an example. Imagine a company launches an AI-powered loan approval system. If they ignore potential biases in the AI's algorithm, it could unintentionally, discriminate against certain demographics, leading to legal challenges, those regulatory scrutiny and public backlash. And not only would this derail the project, but it could also harm the company's reputation and financial standing. So people have to think about this lens number 5, and take it seriously. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. In this one, we're going to look at Marshall Goldsmith leadership coaching in particular, and then say, how can coaching or training in these processes help people implement AI culture wide? So I'm going to throw I'm going to throw this at Grace first. Actually, I'm going to throw this at Grace first, because I know that you had this view that the processes will help people with their vision, and even creating their vision as they start this. But within what we're doing, there are some things that can help them achieve that. So Grace, would you like to add a bit, or just share your view?
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. My views on this, on which is the first lens, vision, purpose, and business, we will, I hope, agree that the most critical aspects of any AI project is ensuring that it aligns with the company's vision, the purpose, and business strategies. And this is where Marshall Goldsmith's stakeholder-centered coaching offers a real advantage, because it helps leaders ensure their behaviors and actions align with the company's strategic goals. And AI projects, by doing so, can easily become, can become, siloed or disconnected from the large business strategy. But involving key stakeholders, this coaching approach keeps everything on track. It ensures that leaders are getting real-time feedback and insights, from those impacted by AI, helping to adjust and then refine their approach and meet the company's long-term objectives. So the coaching, the coaching process itself also holds leaders accountable to the business strategy, making sure that the AI initiatives don't just focus on the technical side, but drive meaningful strategic value. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Brandon, what do you think of the lenses we've looked at? Where do you think what we're doing could help the most?
Yeah, again, I think there's a common thread through the lenses that is emerging in this discussion. And Arifed, thank you for your comments in the chat as well, where you've touched on the importance of communication. I think it was Ken Blanchard who was famously quoted to say that none of us is as smart as all of us. And when you're integrating, especially technologies that are so cutting edge, there's no way that any one person is going to have all of the answers. An immense value in the stakeholder centered coaching process is that it is just that. It is stakeholder centered. It means that as the leader of this project, I don't have to rely on my own capability or any one team. By having these systematic engagement, the systematic communication, the tight feedback cycles, feed forward even, with critical stakeholders in this project, you actually are able to bridge that gap between the technical knowledge and the doing. You're able to bridge that knowing-doing gap by soliciting input from everyone, where everyone's input is requested, everyone's input is considered, and everyone's input is represented in the game plan. You get everybody rowing in the same direction in a way that you just couldn't were you not to apply a stakeholder-centered approach.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. I'm going to move on to the next one we had a look at, in an AI implementation or any large project implementation, actually, who are the people that are likely to most benefit from either understanding out the processes or being coached themselves? As I say, I'm actually coaching one of the guys is actually leading the implementation, and it's working really well what we're doing. But it's really across the company who might be the people to focus on. And this is the initial list we came up to. And again, I was quite fascinated because it was my first, I came up with a list from first principles. I then asked Marshall's bot, I then asked ChatGPT, and then I asked my apologies here, the Google one, my brain's going, the Google one, and to come up with its recommendations. And I was really surprised at the depth of insight they appeared to have. Now, I know that they agreed with what I thought, which is always a dangerous way of measuring these things. But I was actually delighted that they actually came up with some what I thought from very sensible answers. But obviously, there again, it's you and your company that you decide who's important. But the list we came up with, and I'm going to throw it to my colleagues to say, add to it, senior execs, senior leaders, and again, the guy I'm working with, they put the board through all sorts of interesting training, so they actually understand AI, its possible implications, and to make sure they understand some of the things that we're talking about. Obviously, project leaders and managers, because they have to communicate with people who have different cultures. By different cultures, they work in different teams, different bits of the organization, and sometimes it's like herding streaming cats. It's, they have the delightfully impossible job. The AI implementation team, HR and talent development, who have to work out what are the right skills that are needed for all this stuff. And the HR people have to feel people's concerns when they might be frightened of losing their job and all that sort of stuff. So it will be useful for them to know some of these ideas and approaches. And cross-functional teams, which is a little bit like everything I've talked about, but people that do not have control, do not have what I call management control or leadership control, but have to influence people through stealth and all that sort of stuff. So let me throw it to both of you, which within implementing a large company project, or particularly an AI project, who are the people you think would benefit most, and for what reason?
I think, Michael,
Grace is allocated to go first, so I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. Going back on what you said when we just started this, discussion, you pointed out that this is AI implementation is a change project. So to me, project leaders and managers play a pivotal, role in the success of AI projects. And again, Marshall Goldsmith stakeholder-centered coaching can significantly, enhance their effectiveness. I'll give you an example. Consider a project leader tasked with implementing an AI-driven automation system. Without strong leadership, team members, without strong leadership, the team members may fear that job loss or resistant adopting the new technology. However, through Marshall Goldsmith stakeholder-centered coaching, the leader would learn how to engage stakeholders, address teams' concerns, and communicate the long-term benefits of AI. And Brandon alluded to feed forward. And in this case, feed forward will particularly be beneficial here, because what it does, it focuses on future improvements rather than the past mistakes. So it helps the leader adjust behaviors to then proactively, address those challenges that they might be facing, and creates a forward-looking, solution-oriented approach that keeps the project on track.
That's good, and it's very good because it also links to it's good because it links to the next section. We're actually going to break down some of the key aspects of Marshall's process. So we're undercover rather than just having the closed box or Pandora's box. We'll actually explore what's in the box. So thank you for that. Brandon, what are your views? What are your views?
Thank you. It's sort of who's not going to benefit from this. I think that when I'm working on projects like this, I concur with everything Grace said. is establishing a new set of behaviors that's going to make this effective. I would always start with the senior executive team. That's going to be where I begin, because leadership happens from the top. And how we go about establishing these new behaviors is we might use a tool as simple as a star profile. Ladies and gentlemen, if you Google search star profile, I'm sure you're going to find this. It's by Jathan Janov, who's also a coach in our network. And it is defining 3 to 5 key behaviors that would make you sit back and say, wow, this was a really effective person in their role. What are those behaviors? And then using stakeholder-centered coaching to embed those behaviors. And what you will see happen is the organization says, these are the most important ones. And what we will do is issue a coaching initiative for the executive team to ensure that they are role modeling and demonstrating these behaviors with the appropriate frequency, with the appropriate intensity, and with the appropriate visibility, so that these get embedded and cascaded downwards to the HR teams, to the AI implementation teams, and so forth. But you have to have, same as any effective project, a structured approach that measures each milestone along the way. So I would say start with the executive team and watch it trickle down to everyone else.
Okay, that's cool. And I'm going to go for, he says, checking his notes. I'm actually going to go for the project team, because they're the ones in the middle of the fight of the World War III that might happen in the middle of this between the various competing egos or whatever you have in companies. They're the ones that are going to have to turn chaos into sense. So I'm actually going to suggest that the project team and whoever has the governance, because in essence, to me, the governance and the reporting, this is non-trivial stuff. So I'm going to go for those are the people I would choose. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at, and I'm going to throw Brandon in the middle of it because I haven't suggested that I'm going to ask him to do this. He is the expert. He is the expert, so he shouldn't be able to get out of it. Before we look at the various elements of mastery coaching, we sort of been talking about it in very general terms. Can you give the audience just a reminder of what the key principles in his leadership coaching are? And then we'll look at what the view of which of the elements are particularly important to helping implement a major change project or an AI project. So Brandon, just you get the prize if you can. You get the prize if you can hold the floor for 3 minutes or something on this.
Well, this is just one of the joys of working with you, Michael. And by the way, if you were going to give me an easier setup, I don't think you could have picked a better topic than what is the actual principles of the thing that I do, have committed my life to doing. There's 3 principles that underpin the process, and these are worth knowing before understanding the process. The first one is what is leadership effectiveness? Leadership effectiveness throughout history has been defined both in the practical research and the academic research as leadership effectiveness is a function of the degree to which you are perceived as effective, which means if you think, for whatever reason, right or wrong, if you believe I'm an effective leader, you're going to get on the horse and ride next to me. If you think I'm not an effective leader, you're going to walk the other way. You're going to be resisting the direction I'm setting. You're going to be resisting the vision I'm casting. And so if we know that leadership effectiveness is determined by those around you, the first principle of the process is to place attention and focus on your stakeholders. Yeah. How do you do that? Number 2 is you're going to emphasize feed forward, because feedback is about a past we can't change. Feed forward is a future we have complete control over. And thirdly is the idea that changing behavior is difficult. I'm not saying that it's complicated. It's very simple. It's not easy, but it's definitely not complicated. If I want to stop being someone who makes destructive comments, I just stop making them. The problem is perceptions are sticky.
Yeah.
There's a huge latency between behavioral change and perception change. So here's how we combat that. If I want to be a more effective presenter working with Grace and Michael, Very simple. I'm going to say at the end of this, Michael, what did I do that was particularly effective? What should I do more of or less of? If I want to be a better facilitator with you, what suggestions do you have for me? Grace, same question. From this, I'm going to pick one thing to get better at. Michael, I want to be better at being ready for impromptu discussions. What suggestions do you have for me? And he's going to give me, Grace, what suggestions do you have? Thank you for your suggestions. Here's the action plan I intend to execute to show you that I'm better at this. Hey, Michael, it's been 30 days. We've done a handful of presentations. What have you noticed? Anything I need to do more of or less of? Anything I should start doing or stop doing? 3 months, 6 months go by. Hey, what changes have you seen in my ability to be more prepared for impromptu discussions? -3 to +3. I've gotten worse. I've gotten better. This phenomenally simple process, you don't need a coach for. Well, theoretically, you don't need a coach for, but we know there's a gap between what we know needs to be done and what we actually do. So it's simple. Pick something to get better at. Notice who's going to get better who's going to notice if you get better. Ask them for suggestions. Tell them what you intend to do with those suggestions. Execute it, and then ask what changes have people seen. Plain and simple, and you'd be shocked at how much it embeds new behaviors in organizations in the straightest possible line. How was that for a quick 3-minute pitch?
That was very good. That's so much so, I'm going to barge in before I give it to Grace. Because it's just a quick comment. It's just a quick comment I want to make about this thing about behavior change sounds easy, but maybe harder than we think. And one of them is in my coaching, I have three ways I normally end sessions. And one of the ways is simply to say to the person, look, we've had our session today. At this moment in time, 100% honesty, how are you feeling? What are you thinking? Very simple, very simple. But I was scared to do it because I didn't really want to know. I know according to the book, it's a simple, obvious question, but I didn't want them to tell me it was a crap session. And to be able to answer the question and listen to the answer, I have to be okay with whatever they say. And it took me a long time. It's very effective, by the way. It's very effective, Ed, because you find out the truth. And if you know the truth, you know what to do next. If you don't get the truth, you don't know what to do next. And you tend to make it up and you tend to fool yourself. But it took me a long time to be genuinely okay with whatever anybody said. And I encourage them that if you think it's crap, you can tell me. This is not part of what we're about. It took me a long time to do that, and I have to admit, in other areas of my life, I can't do it. But I can do it within a coaching session. And having some sort of structure and having somebody to check in with who is on your side, not judging you, which is a sort of coach, I think is tremendously useful. But sorry, I had to get that in. Thanks, Brandon. Grace, would you like to add to what Brandon said?
Yeah, as I was listening to Brandon, going through the process of stakeholder-centered coaching, I was then sort of trying to transfer it into the AI implementation and picking out some aspects and the sort of key. There are others, but the sort of 3 key aspects of stakeholder-centered coaching that are crucial. You did the stakeholder involvement. You are going to be working with stakeholders, so you cannot ignore that. You've got the feedback. Yes, we always look at that, but it's done. What do? We focus on that feed forward. So by the stakeholder involvement, you want to ensure the key people are engaged throughout the project and offering those insights and also fostering that ownership, because without it, AI projects will risk that misalignment with a business goal. There'll be lack of buy-in and resistance, which can then lead to those delays, miscommunication, or even project failure. Is that what we really want? We've got the feedback. A lot of people talk about feedback. Yes, it allows for those real-time improvements, ensuring the project adapts as needed. But the power of stakeholder-centered coaching, I think it's the feed forward, which has been elaborated in helping leaders, teams proactively improve. So together, these elements would create, continuous improvement loop keeping AI projects agile, aligned, and more likely to succeed.
That's
Thank
cool.
you.
And I'm going to drop down in a little bit of detail because I'm going to say it's building a little bit on what Grace said. This is coming up with some of the specific areas that curious enough people I've talked to, but also ChatGPT, which I didn't think would know that much about Marshall's process, but obviously does. And Gemini also came up with some very sensible stuff. So I sort of amalgamated them all together, and then I'll throw it back to you to recap which do you think might be the most important. So the first one, it says, and by the way, some of these surprised me, but when I thought about it a bit more deeply, I thought, yeah, it fits. So the most beneficial aspect of Marshall's leadership coaching for AI projects are creating a shared vision. How do you actually get people to communicate in such a way that the very best ideas are put forward into the vision, and finally they choose the very best idea as the agreed company vision? Stakeholder involvement. We've already been talking about that for some time, so I'm not going to say too much more on that. An interesting one. It's the pointing out that one of the emphases in Marshall's coaching is you need courage and humility. You need to be able to put your head above the parapet, knowing it's going to be sliced off. You have to have the courage, if you really believe in something, that you will tell people, even though it may be very unpopular. Now, you do need a culture that won't cut your head off too much. But both of those things are within the process. And humility, because one of the things I've learned over time, and this includes me, the biggest barrier to learning is often thinking you already know it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in life, there's a Ray Dalio comment I really like. It's not about proving you're right, it's about finding the right answer. And many people spend a lot of energy trying to prove they're right. And from a corporate survival mode, there are very good reasons. There are very good reasons to do that. But for the success of a project, the idea that we're looking for the right answer, not trying to prove ourselves, is a real challenge for somebody that's really important. So it's the emphasis of courage and humility. Discipline and follow-up. I smile at discipline because it's like willpower. I sometimes wonder if it exists. It's just a figment of people's imagination. However, what is certain that having a basic framework, not too precise, it's this balance between prison and chaos. You need somewhere between the two, but you need a basic framework that makes developing the right habits much easier. So there's this thing about discipline and follow-up, but you have to do the discipline. You have to follow up, because if you don't follow up, it's very easy to believe your own propaganda. And again, as we've talked about before, follow-up can be very uncomfortable. For some people do not tell us what we want to hear. And some people have learned not to listen to what they want to hear. But this does not help in challenging times when most things are changing. So follow discipline and follow-up. Building trust and open communication is really a part of it. It's a place where people know they can say what they want, but they still do it in a respectful way. And the overall culture is okay with, I'm going to say a bit strangely, is okay with people trying things and them not working, providing they've made balanced ROI decisions on what they're trying. Developing agility, which is, as we all know, anybody that's involved in a change project, it is all about being agile, particularly now when things are beginning to change even faster. And the last one is promoting accountability. And I quite like the idea. It's something I hated in the past, but we have to each take individual responsibility. We can't blame, well, we can blame everybody else for what we do, but it's not a very good process for the longer term. So, because you get this, Brandon, because you're smiling. This will teach you not to smile. So what, from your perspective, what do you think of those are one or two of them that you think is really useful in any change project?
I'd probably skew towards accountability and governance. With we've said that this isn't complex, it's simple. And does willpower even exist? Whether it does or not, I think that we can synthesize the same outcomes by providing the right type of governance at the right intervals, as well as the right accountability and visibility for those results. And here's how stakeholder-centered coaching does that. Number one is daily behavioral checklist. When I have my leadership goal, for example, my goal is delegating effectively. I have my action plan printed up right here. One of my action items is clearly define the scope of work, especially how success is measured. So this is just convenient to keep everything at an arm's reach at your desk. I've got a list of the behaviors I'm aiming for and days of the week in the vertical. And every day before I leave my desk, I go through and did I do this? Yes or no? Right or wrong? Did I do this? Self-reporting. And when I meet with my coach, I send him this in advance. He already knows how I've done. He can look to see which behaviors have you struggled with in the week, which days of the week have been the most difficult. So having a daily checklist that says, did I do this, yes or no, makes you abundantly aware of your behaviors in all cases. So we have accountability. We also use the mini survey. Growth in stakeholder-centered coaching is not judged by me as the coach. It's not judged by you as the leader. It's judged by people around you, right? Leadership effectiveness is a function of how others perceive you. So instead of saying, hey, coach, do you think I'm better? Leader, do you think you're better? We say direct reports. Have you seen a change in your leader's behavior? Yes or no? That comes out as a final average score between -3 and +3. And you share this with people. I set out to get better at this. Here's how much better I did. Here's what I'm going to do in the next 6 months. So it's really applying, let's call it agile leadership. But accountability and governance, I think, is the key to ensuring the behavioral side of AI projects is smooth and effective.
I like that. Thanks, Brandon. Again, before I come to Grace, I want to throw a bit in for almost for entertainment, because when I started doing this, I had a client and they wanted to, their goal was to get better at stock market trading, and their plan was to practice their strategy the night before. And what was so fun, sorry, fun is the wrong word, they sent me the spreadsheet where they'd done it, and after 2 months, they hadn't done it once. They religiously did the spreadsheet. And I say they literally hadn't done it once. They then ran away. But that's me being a bit naughty. But I do want to make the point that it's just information. It's nothing to worry about if we haven't done something. It's just telling us that maybe there's something missing and we ought to do something else. We ought to either come up with a new way of doing it, or maybe it's not important and we ought to drop it. But again, I was saying some of these very simple processes are remarkably difficult, because they're hitting our egos and blind spots and telling us things that maybe we don't want to hear. So I don't want to overdo this, but I say luckily having clients is really good, because they teach me how to be brilliant and they teach me how to sabotage myself. And funnily enough, sometimes both work. So I'm as good as bad as anybody else. But as I say, in my role, you notice what people are doing that works, and you notice how people are stopping themselves getting the results that they want. So I'm just emphasizing that there's a lot of stuff in what you said. Sorry, Grace, I kept you waiting.
No, that's absolutely fine, Michael. And I think probably based on what you just said, not many people like to be told what to do. I think the courage and humility are really critical, because if a leader is not prepared to have the courage to say, you know what, I'm going to put myself in this the spot and let people tell me what it is I'm good at and what I need to be better at, then how are you going to work towards achieving that project? And if they don't have the humility to be able to say just thank you to whatever feed forward that's been given to them, how will they then be able to again grow as a leader, but also be effective in supporting the implementation of the AI project? And I think it goes also back to why, when we, stakeholder-centered coaching, humility and courage are one of those, key things you've got to establish for the from the leader in terms of coachability. Yeah. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I'm going to double emphasize that, because I'm going to say, I know all this stuff. It doesn't mean I always do it. However, I do now 98% of the time do it in my coaching sessions. And again, it's this, I like the sort of the balance between, on one side, you've got a prison, you don't want to be there because you're killed by frameworks because you still need the freedom to operate. And on the other side, you have chaos. And what I find interesting is the idea is to have the right touch of frameworks and discipline that you are able to navigate between prison and chaos, but you have the creativity to be your very best. And that's one of the things I quite like Marshall's process, because it's not too heavy, it's very positive. You still have to do it, but it's not a draconian, you've got to do this, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. It's a framework. And if you stick to the, and to me, it's a very wise one. If you stick to the framework, you cannot not learn. And I think as we go into this very interesting future, which we could have a whole few sessions of talking about, as we go into this future, these are some of the disciplines and framework that I think is really, really, really useful.
Michael, would you humor me an additional 60 seconds on this particular topic?
Sorry, yes, of course.
Set the timer. I think what's actually most valuable, even before some of the things we've talked about and tying it all together, is that the process reverse engineers success. It reverse engineers success. So when I say start with the leadership team, start with a STAR profile, determine the key behaviors, what you're doing is you're saying, here's where we want to go. And instead of bringing in some brilliant consultants that says, here's the pathway to get there, you go straight to the people who would say, yeah, we're actually at the right place. And you say, what step happened just before this? What happened just before that? What happened just before that? And so you are bringing about new leadership features, let's say, in a systematic way based on the people who are going to evaluate whether or not your behaviors were successful. This assumes the executive team has selected the right behaviors. This assumes that everyone in their seat is technically proficient in their function. And once that is achieved, you're reverse engineering success, and the courage, the humility, the discipline, the governance, the accountability, all of this institutionalizes that reverse engineered behavior. That is the real value, because that's what prevents it from being draconian. This is what you could do to get there. Your action plan is what I would do, what I'm willing to do to get there. But it's a linear path, and there's no ambiguity on how to get there. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
And that brings me back. It's one of the things I said at the beginning. One of my clients refused to take on the project of leading AI because he looked at his board. He looked at the board and he said, two of them, it just wouldn't work. That he would have to get rid of two. I'm not saying he's right or wrong, but his view was he would have to get rid of two board members, because what, in his view, all they were interested in is they worked on a thing where they got their contracts every 3 years. And he was saying they were looking at a 3-year timescale. They wanted to ensure their publicity and their brand was at its best at the end of the 3 years. So they weren't, they weren't interested in anything that might put that at risk. And anything exciting has risks. You have to manage them. So that was the reason he said he didn't take the project. He said if he took the project on, he'd have to build a shadow organization to get around shadow organization to get around them. So I'm talking in fun, but actually there's quite a lot of seriousness. This is in some ways it's a brilliant putting AI into an organization. For those with braveness and courage and humility, it's an absolutely superb project. But I think one of the messages that I get from this, it may not be quite as simple as you think. And please be aware of that. One of the things we want people to do is at least make sure you have the tools to go up the mountain. And what we're talking about is some of those tools. Okay, well, we have miraculously finished just about on time. But I would love to say careful planning, but I'm not going to say careful planning. We have about 4 minutes to go. So, Brandon, would you like to say some last words?
Yeah, I would say that all of this is, there is a great deal of complexity on the road ahead. That is not a reason to not forge forward. This isn't a question of will organizations be taking on large AI projects. It's a matter of when. So learning this now and being courageous enough to experiment, to fail, and to make the necessary mistakes for learning early on when you're not going toe to toe with most of your competitors because they may not be as far ahead as you. That's going to give you a distinct and sustainable competitive advantage that is the equivalent of the duration it takes for you to actually be effective. That's a long competitive advantage. So I would encourage you, as you look at this, understand it is complex, it is scary, but it is the future. The question is, are you going to get there before the others in your field? And are you going to be the trailblazer that others look for to establish the best practices? So best of luck. Keep us all informed of your efforts.
Grace, your last few words.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's just to say, based on what we've shared, is for leaders, organizations to really reflect on how they're going to approach this AI change project, but also look at the lenses and really think about how the whole process will be taking place. But bear in mind, leadership is key, and that is where we have to start from before we start cascading and just introducing AI without thinking things through on how it's going to impact on the stakeholders, and also whether it's going to be a success at the end of it. Thank you for that.
Brilliant. If I can just wrap it up by saying thank you all for listening. I will send to anybody who's a first connection that's registered, you will get a copy of the recording, and you will get a copy of our notes of the lenses and all the bits we've talked about here. So thank you for listening, and thank you to my guests for sharing their time. So I'll let everybody smile for a second, and I'll end the stream.
Thank you.